Hi, everybody. Hope you all had a good weekend. I figured it's time. It's been a couple weeks. It's time for me to at least show my face on the website again. At least a link to a video for those of you that are able to watch these things. Hope you had a good weekend. Able to get time away from the screen. I know I'm in the same boat with everybody. Certain days, I absolutely hate this. Um, I have my peaks and valleys. This is not what I signed up for. I want to be in the classroom. I want to be with my students. Other days when I get to sleep in just a little bit longer and sit here and have my coffee in my little computer room, then hey, this isn't all that bad. Kind of work at my own pace. Grade things as they come in. I'm not having to give the same lecture 5 times a day or 4 times a day. But regardless, this is what it is. This virtual classroom. So I had announced last week that office hours and it's every day from 8:30 in the morning till noon. I'm on my computer, or at least close to my computer. I can answer emails. If you chat with me through the Teams, I'm usually quick to respond. After 11:30 to 12 o'clock hour, my own kids are getting on the computer, and so I'm still around the computer. I just can't access. I usually don't access it quickly, and so I'm not gonna respond to an email most likely until the next day. I still get it on my phone if it's a big problem. I'll see that I received something from you, and I'll be able to respond to that quickly. So with late assignments, I will say this, that if you do turn in late assignments on Teams, from my side of things, there's nothing that announces to me that someone turned in an assignment late. So if you turn, say last week's webcast, if you turn that assignment in, there's nothing that announces to me that you've turned it in. And I will from time to time check those old assignments, but the best thing for you is to probably shoot me an email or the little chat box on that Teams. Hit the chat and send me a quick message through the chat box there, to say, hey, you turned in this assignment, and so then I can open up that old assignment, and I'll get a grade and put it in the grade book. But otherwise, I've had students email me say, hey, I turned something in last week and it's still not graded. Well, again, once I start assigning new assignments, I've moved on, and I don't always go back and check old assignments. So shoot me an email or a chat. To go over some of those entries from last week, the war's over, so World War I ended. It ends with, as one of the questions on the Treaty of Versailles. It's signed in the spring of 1919, even though the war itself ends in November, the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month, 11 a.m. on November 11th, 1918. The guns fell silent and the armistice was agreed upon. And we finally get the treaty the following spring, and Woodrow Wilson's 14-point plan, which he wanted to create a League of Nations. So two interesting components to that is, one, the United States never did sign the treaty. So we didn't sign the treaty that our president helped create. Two, the League of Nations that our president was very adamant about creating, we never joined. Our Congress, never agreed to that. Thus, between World War I and World War II, we never joined the League of Nations. Woodrow Wilson has a stroke after the war ends, and he doesn't run for re-election, and that is how his presidency goes out. He's not a real popular guy in that final year, 1919 coming to 1920. But anyway, so the war ends. We've got this 2 or 3 questions dealt with strikes and the upheaval in the American economy. Well, during the war, the government had set a lot of price controls and was regulating the prices of consumer goods, and that was put in place because they didn't want certain companies to gouge the consumers. They needed to reserve certain goods to be used for the war effort, and so they agreed, kind of a gentleman's agreement, to maintain prices and wages. The workers wouldn't go on strike. Their wages aren't going to go up. But once the war ended, price controls ended, and not only price controls ended, but then the rationing of certain goods ended, and people rushed out to buy goods they hadn't been able to really get a hold of in the last couple of years. And maybe in our current situation, we've seen a little bit of that of people rushing out to buy certain goods. It's not an apples to apples comparison, but there is that, especially a couple of weeks ago, that mad rush to go to Costco and buy all the toilet paper and buy all the hand lotion and whatever else it was. But anyway, that all ended the moment the war ended, and so there was this rush to go out and buy things. Prices began to go up. Prices are going up faster than wages could go up. And then what also the textbook didn't lead into too much was, when the war ended, all the government contracts were ended very shortly after. So if November 11th the war ends, November 12th the government contracts for new uniforms, new bullets, new soldiers' helmets, whatever it might have been. Say a rifle company, Browning Rifle Company, had a contract to make, I don't know, let's just say 1 million new guns for the war effort. And that contract had been set in October of 1918. But November 11th, the government calls Browning and says, we don't need those guns anymore. End the contract. We'll buy what you've made, but we don't need 1 million guns anymore. And when that happened, so Browning had gone out and hired 100 new employees to make these 1 million guns that the war effort needed. And now they don't need those guns, and so Browning doesn't need all those employees, and so they began to lay off employees. Those that still did have jobs were now demanding that they receive a higher wage. And so 1919, known as the year of the strike, one of our questions was how many strikes had taken place. 3,600 strikes took place throughout the United States, involving more than 4 million workers. And in the city of Seattle, the city was virtually brought to a standstill, with right around, starting with 35,000 dock workers, but by the end of it all, 60,000 employees and workers had walked off their job and gone on strike in the city of Seattle. We had the Boston police strike. 75% of the police force went on strike, and Governor Calvin Coolidge and then the police chief of Boston said, you're all fired. There's no way that you can go on strike against the public safety. And so they were rioting, they were looting, and so that was going on. There were some big strikes in Chicago. There were strikes in northern Idaho in the lumber industry. There were strikes in Butte in the copper mines. And so there were strikes everywhere. Fast forwarding here to number 8 from last week, the presidential slogan, or Warren G. Harding's return to normalcy. That term has actually been used in our own politics here in the last few weeks. Someone had said they can't wait to return to some normalcy, some less chaotic time. In 1920, when he says that, let's return to the time before World War I, before the Great War, maybe even before 1900, before progressivism had really hit the ground. And so let's go back to a time when it was less chaotic. And so that strikes a chord with us today. Let's go back to it. I can't wait to go back to a time where it's not as chaotic and we're not having to do the virtual classroom. So, and then you had a Roaring '20s web quest. I always love the terminology, the gimlet. Much of what maybe we're doing online sometimes seems like a gimlet, a chronic bore. But nonetheless, we had the cat's meow. I think something that was highly sought after, and some other ones. There were some questions on the Harlem Renaissance. That is a fantastic era of American history to study. And this is one of these situations where I would love to combine with an English teacher to do some of that, read some of Langston Hughes' poetry, listen to some of that jazz music and some of the other music, and look at some of that art. So one of the options for the project coming up is there's a Harlem Renaissance option. So regarding that project, you have three options. Okay, you can either do a PowerPoint, and you can do the Harlem Renaissance, you can do jazz, you can do fashion, whatever it might be. You have different slides. Harlem Renaissance article and the 1920s fashion article. So I have three different options. So those of you that are you don't have a computer to create a PowerPoint, well, then you can just do a handwritten article on either the Harlem Renaissance or the fashion of the 1920s. So need two sources. Cite the website and the URL address. And then I've got some more entry questions. We're moving into the Great Depression, and again, I'm not forecasting anything, but the amount of money that is being handed out right now. We're getting government checks, and interest rates are being slashed. Who knows what we're on the cusp of here in 2020. Again, not predicting anything, but there are some similarities. Are we going to end up with another thing from like we had in the 1930s? Probably not, because of where we are right now and how prepared we are, and we're looking forward to this. By the time we get to 1932 and we have the peak unemployment rate, we've been in the Great Depression by 3 years, and things were bad. But we're a little more prepared for things today. Okay, so you've got entry questions this week. You've got a project that's not going to be due until next Tuesday. That would be April 15th, tax day. Due next Tuesday. Tomorrow is April 15th. Next Tuesday is April 21st, and that's due at noon. So I think if you're writing the 3 to 4 paragraph article, that's not very hard. A 10-slide PowerPoint, again, pretty quick. So, wow, I'm at 12 and a half minutes so far. All right. Something also, students are having a hard time maybe with the textbook. So I'm going to get the phone up and go to, let's see, I don't know how do I switch this thing. Of course, I don't know how to switch it. So I'll just have to turn it around. Okay, and so when you go to my website, you're at textbook. Click on textbook. To the green book, you go to the Clever app. Click on that. Old blue online version. Click on that. And then we've got all the different chapters. You don't have to download it. You can just view it. It's got all the chapters that we're studying. So all the textbooks are located on my website. Okay. All right, everybody. So have a good rest of your week. Keep fighting the good fight, and I'll maybe see you in a couple more weeks when I give another one of these. Bye.